The moment my son squeezed my hand under the table, I felt it 3 short pulses, deliberate and careful, the same signal we used when he was 7 years old and wanted to leave a place without causing a scene. He was 31 now, and we were sitting at my dining room table with his girlfriend of 4 months, a woman named Alicia Drummond, who was telling me about the investment property she was helping her clients acquire in Kelowna. I smiled at her across the table and poured more wine, but inside, every nerve I had was standing at attention. My name is Gordon Whitfield. I'm 63 years old, and I spent 22 years with the OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police, working financial crimes before I took early retirement and spent another 11 years consulting for the Financial Services Regulatory Authority of Ontario. I reviewed fraud cases. I trained investigators. I sat across tables from some of the most convincing, charming, and dangerous people I had ever met, and I was looking at one of them right now. I just didn't know how bad it was yet. My wife Carol was in the kitchen finishing the pie. She came in laughing, setting the plate down and asking Alicia about her drive up from Toronto. My son, his name is Nathan, laughed at something Alicia said and reached over to touch her hand. He looked happy on the surface. He always had a good poker face, that boy. He got it from me. But he had also squeezed my hand 3 times. We had invented the signal together after a Christmas dinner when he was in grade 2, and his uncle, my brother Douglas, who could talk for 6 uninterrupted hours about municipal water infrastructure, had cornered Nathan in the hallway for 45 minutes. From that night forward, 3 squeezes meant, I need your help getting out of this, but I don't want to make it obvious. It was our thing. We hadn't used it in over a decade. He used it tonight, right after Alicia finished explaining her work. She had described herself as a private wealth facilitator. Not a financial advisor, not an investment broker, a private wealth facilitator. She said it the way people say a title they've rehearsed. She worked with a small group of high net worth clients, she explained, helping them move money into alternative asset structures that weren't available through traditional banks. Real estate, yes, but also private lending pools, agricultural land trusts in the Okanagan, energy infrastructure partnerships in Alberta. There's a whole world of returns that regular people never even know exists, she said, and she said it warmly, not with arrogance, but with the tone of someone letting you in on something generous. I nodded. I asked her what kind of oversight these structures had. She smiled, and it was a very good smile, open and patient, and said that was actually one of the advantages. Less regulatory friction meant faster movement of capital, which was where the real returns came from. Less regulatory friction, I repeated, pleasantly. Exactly, she said. Carol was looking at me. She knows my face the way you only know someone's face after 36 years of marriage, and she could see something happening behind my eyes that I was working hard to keep off my face. She quietly stood up and asked Alicia if she'd like to see the back garden before the light was completely gone. Nathan waited until the back door closed. Then he leaned forward and put both his elbows on the table and looked at me the way he used to look at me when he was a teenager and had something hard to say. I know what you're thinking, he said. Tell me what I'm thinking, I said. You're thinking something's off. I'm thinking I'd like to hear from you, I said. How long has this been going on? He rubbed the back of his neck. He'd been losing sleep. I could see it in the shadows under his eyes, the way he'd been quieter than usual during dinner, laughing a beat after the rest of us. She moved in with me 6 weeks ago, he said. She said her lease ended and she needed 2 months to sort out a new place, and I didn't think anything of it. I wanted her to. Okay. But then she started talking to me about my RRSP. He looked down at the table. She said I was leaving money on the table, that she could show me how to restructure it into something that would grow 3 times as fast, and it would all be legal, just not something mainstream advisors would ever recommend, because they make their commissions off keeping you in mutual funds. I kept my voice completely level. How much has she asked you to move? She hasn't asked yet. She's been building up to it. She showed me documents, prospectuses. She called them for something called the Lakeshore Private Capital Fund. It looked real. It had logos, a registered address in Vancouver, performance charts going back 8 years. Nathan, how much is in your RRSP? He met my eyes. 240,000. I sat with that for a moment. She doesn't know what I do, I said. It wasn't a question. I told her you were retired, OPP. She said that was so impressive. He paused. She said it like she already knew and didn't care, like it didn't occur to her that it mattered. That told me something. Either she was very confident or very reckless, and in my experience, the two were often the same person at different stages of the same career. Has she shown you contracts? Anything she's asked you to sign? She emailed me something last week. A subscription agreement, she called it. She said there was no rush, but the next intake window for the fund closes at the end of the month. Artificial urgency. It is the oldest lever in the fraud playbook, the closing window, the last seat on the plane, the opportunity that won't come again. Real investment funds don't have intake windows that expire in 3 weeks. I need you to forward me that email, I said. Tonight, before she leaves. Dad. Nathan. I kept my voice quiet. I'm not trying to tell you who to be with. I'm asking you to let me look at a document. That's all. He nodded slowly. Carol and Alicia came back inside, laughing about a neighborhood cat that had apparently wandered into the garden. Alicia was warm and easy for the rest of the evening. She helped clear the dishes without being asked. She remembered that Carol took her tea without milk. She asked me about a case I'd mentioned during dinner, a real estate fraud ring in Barrie that had been in the news. And she listened with what appeared to be genuine interest and asked intelligent follow-up. Our questions. She was good. She was very, very good. After they left, Carol stood at the kitchen sink and didn't say anything for a while. You saw it too, I said. I saw you go very still when she said, less regulatory friction, Carol said. That's your face when you're deciding how to handle something. I need to make some calls tomorrow. Carol dried her hands on the dish towel and turned around. How bad do you think it is? I don't know yet, I said. But Nathan has $240,000 in an RRSP and a girlfriend who moved in 6 weeks ago and is steering him toward an unregistered investment vehicle with a deadline at the end of the month. Carol set the dish towel down very carefully. Okay, she said. What do you need me to do? That was the thing about 36 years. You don't have to explain the whole shape of a problem. You just have to name the weight of it, and the other person understands. The email Nathan forwarded me that night was 17 pages long. It was formatted professionally clean fonts, a watermarked letterhead from something called Lakeshore Private Capital Corporation, a registered address on West Georgia Street in Vancouver, a disclosure section at the back, written in dense legal language that most people would skim past without reading. I didn't skim it. I spent 2 hours with it at the kitchen table after Carol went to bed. The performance chart showing 8 years of returns cited no auditor. The section on investor protections referred to something called the Lakeshore Capital Investor Assurance Program, which was described in a separate document that was not attached and not linked. The subscription minimum was $25,000, with a preferred allocation available for commitments over $100,000. The fund's stated strategy involved private credit facilities secured by physical assets, which was language that could mean almost anything or nothing at all. The registered address on West Georgia Street, when I pulled it up, was a business registration service, the kind of address that costs $40 a month and forwards your mail. Not a real office, not a real firm. I knew 2 people I could call. The first was a woman named Sandra Osei, who had run white-collar investigations for the RCMP in Toronto before moving to the OSC, the Ontario Securities Commission. We'd crossed paths on 3 different cases over the years, and she owed me nothing. But we respected each other's work, and she answered her phone. The second was a man named Paul Trevithick, who had been a forensic accountant for the Crown Attorney's Office in Hamilton for 20 years and now ran his own practice. Paul could look at a financial document and tell you within 20 minutes whether the math was built to deceive. I texted them both that night and asked if we could speak the next morning. Sandra called me at 8:15. I gave her the name Lakeshore Private Capital Corporation and the West Georgia address and Alicia Drummond's name. She was quiet for a moment. Give me an hour, she said. Paul called at 8:45. I read him sections of the subscription agreement over the phone, and he interrupted me twice to ask me to repeat things. After I finished, he was quiet for long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Gordon, he said finally, the section on asset-backed security? The physical assets they claim to secure the credit facilities against, there's no description of what those assets actually are. None. A real private credit fund would have a schedule. They'd list the collateral. There's nothing here. So it's empty language. It's a frame without a painting. You could hang anything in it, or nothing. If someone invested and the fund said the assets depreciated or the credit facility defaulted, there'd be no way to verify anything ever existed. Sandra called back at 9:50. She's real, Sandra said, and I could hear the particular flatness in her voice that meant this wasn't going to be simple. Alicia Drummond, 34 years old, grew up in Sudbury, studied business at Laurier, worked 3 years at a legitimate wealth management firm in Mississauga before she was let go. The firm filed a complaint with FSRA. The file is closed, but it exists. What was the complaint? Inappropriate relationship with a client. The client was a widower, 68 years old. He moved $70,000 into a private fund at her recommendation before the firm caught it. The fund had no registration. The money was gone. The client declined to press criminal charges, family pressure. Apparently, he was embarrassed. I closed my eyes briefly. There it was. A dry run. A smaller version of the same play. Rehearsed, refined, applied again. Is Lakeshore registered anywhere? No. There is no registered fund by that name in any province. So she's running a barefaced fraud. It appears that way. The question is whether we can get enough to move on it before she takes the money and closes the window, so to speak. Sandra paused. How close is she to the ask? Subscription agreement already sent. Month-end deadline. How much is at risk? My son's retirement savings. $240,000. Another pause, shorter this time. Sandra and I had worked cases for years. We'd both sat across from families who lost everything. This time it was closer to home than either of us was used to. Okay, she said. We need to be careful about how we do this. If she's spooked, she'll disappear. We've seen this before. These operators have exit strategies. Clean personal profiles. Minimal physical footprint. The ability to be someone else in a different city in 48 hours. What do you need from me? I need Nathan to agree to one more meeting with her. I need her on recorded audio, making the investment pitch, and asking him to commit funds. In Ontario, you can record a conversation you're a party to without disclosing it. If Nathan agrees to meet with her and records it himself, his own phone, his own conversation, that recording is admissible. Nathan's going to have questions about this. I know. But Gordon, he came to you. He sent you the signal. He already knows something is wrong. He's been waiting for you to tell him how to act on it. She was right. I drove to Nathan's apartment that afternoon. He met me at the door in a t-shirt, his hair still damp, and I could see from his face that he'd been anxious all morning. I sat down on his couch, and I told him everything. The West Georgia address, the missing auditor, Paul's analysis of the subscription agreement, the previous complaint in Mississauga, the widower who lost $70,000 and was too ashamed to press charges. Nathan sat very still through all of it. She told me she loved me, he said. Not angry, just quiet. The way people go quiet when they're processing the architecture of something they'd trusted completely. I know. She said that last week. The first time. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that would make that land differently. He had to sit with it. After a while, he looked up. What do I need to do? I explained the recording. I explained that he would need to meet with her and let her make the pitch, fully let her ask for the commitment, let her name the amount, let her describe the fund and the timeline. He needed to not overreact, not tip her off, not give her any reason to think anything had changed. Can you do that? I asked. He looked at me with those steady eyes he'd had since he was a kid, the ones that didn't flinch at hard things. I spent 6 weeks trying to talk myself out of what I already knew, he said. Yeah, Dad. I can sit across from her for an hour. He called her that evening and told her he'd been thinking seriously about the subscription agreement, and he had a few questions before he committed. He told her he wanted to sit down properly, not just text back and forth. She suggested a coffee on Thursday afternoon. She was warm, unhurried, pleased, everything exactly calibrated to give him no reason to be alarmed. Thursday morning, I drove to Nathan's apartment again. We sat at his kitchen table and I walked him through exactly what to do. Keep his phone in his front shirt pocket, screen facing in, record from the voice memo app. Let her talk, don't rush her. If she paused, let the silence sit, people fill silence. Ask clarifying questions in a neutral tone. Don't be confrontational. Don't be overly eager. Be a man who's almost ready to say yes. He nodded through all of it. How are you feeling? I asked. Honestly, he looked out the window. Angry, but calm angry. The kind where you just want to get it done. That's the right kind, I said. Stay in that. I drove home and sat in the kitchen with Carol, and we didn't talk much. She made tea, and we listened to the radio and waited. He texted me at 4:17. Done. I have it all. Calling you in 10 minutes. His voice on the phone was steady but thin, the way voices get when adrenaline is still leaving a body. He told me she had been clear and complete. She described the fund structure. The projected returns 18 to 22% annually, she said, which is a number so far outside the range of any legitimate fund that it functions almost as a signature, the intake deadline, the preferred allocation available to him if he committed over 100,000. The wire transfer process. The account details. She had named an account at a credit union in British Columbia. She told me the fund managers preferred to work outside the big banks because of processing speed, Nathan said. She said my money would be working for me within 72 hours of the transfer. 72 hours. I knew what that meant. By the time anyone realized the fund didn't exist and the account had been drained, 72 hours was more than enough time to move money through enough layers to make it very difficult to recover. I called Sandra that evening and told her we had the recording. She asked Nathan to send her the audio file securely, which he did within the hour. She listened to it overnight. She called me the next morning at 7:30. "It's enough," she said. "We're moving today." I didn't ask for the details of how it unfolded. That wasn't my role and it wasn't Nathan's. What I can tell you is that Alicia Drummond was arrested at Nathan's apartment on Friday morning before 8 o'clock. I know because Nathan called me while it was happening, standing in the hallway outside his own front door in his socks. And he said, very quietly, "They're inside, Dad. It's happening." "Good," I said. "Go put on your shoes. Go outside. Get some air." The investigation that followed revealed that Alicia had run variations of the same scheme in 2 other provinces. The Lakeshore Private Capital Fund was one of 3 fraudulent vehicles she used. Across all of her victims, 8 people in total, that investigators could establish the total losses exceeded $900,000. Some of those people had already transferred money before Nathan ever met her. He was the first one who hadn't lost $1. 2 weeks later, Nathan came for Sunday dinner again. Just the 3 of us, him, Carol, and me. Carol made her roast chicken, the one she's been making since Nathan was in diapers, and we sat at the same table where 4 months of someone's careful, calculated deception had almost paid off. Nathan was quiet through most of dinner. Not the anxious quiet of before, a different kind, more settled, the kind that comes after something difficult is finished. He helped Carol with the dishes without being asked, the way he always did when he was a kid, and when she went upstairs to call her sister, he came and sat across from me at the kitchen table with his hands around his coffee mug. "I keep asking myself how I didn't see it," he said. "You did see it," I said. "That's why you used the signal." He thought about that. "I mean earlier, before it got that far. I looked at my son, this person I had watched grow from a boy who needed a secret hand signal to escape his uncle's water infrastructure monologue, into a man who had sat calmly across from someone who was systematically trying to destroy his financial future, and held himself together long, enough to help bring her down. Nathan," I said, "she was very good at what she did. She had done it before. She had refined it. She knew exactly which levers to pull: affection, trust, the promise of belonging to something exclusive that other people didn't have access to. That's not a failure of your intelligence. That's her investing significant skill and preparation into deceiving you. It doesn't feel great. It shouldn't. But here's what you should actually hold on to. The moment your gut told you something was wrong, you listened to it. You didn't talk yourself out of it completely. You reached out. That's the thing that made every other thing possible." He nodded, slowly. "Most people don't," I said. "That's the tragedy in these cases. Most people feel the wrongness and convince themselves they're being paranoid. They're embarrassed to say anything. They don't want to look foolish, or they don't want the relationship to be what it's turning out to be. So they wait, and while they're waiting, the window closes, and the money moves, and the person is gone." We sat for a moment with the sound of Carol talking on the phone upstairs, and the rain starting against the kitchen window. "Is she going to prison?" Nathan asked. "That's for the courts to determine," I said. "What I can tell you is that the evidence is strong. The recording is clear, and there are 8 other people who now have a chance at some form of accountability because you didn't let her finish what she started." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm glad I texted you." "So am I said. "And Nathan, you came to me. That matters. Don't ever stop doing that." He smiled at that, small and real, and we sat there until Carol came back downstairs, and the rain got heavier, and eventually all three of us moved to the living room and watched an old hockey game neither Nathan nor I cared about, and Carol fell asleep in the armchair with her feet tucked up, and it was just an ordinary evening at home, and that after everything felt like exactly the right thing to be. There are things I want to say clearly, as someone who spent more than 30 years working financial crime. Fraud like this exists because it is effective. It works not on foolish people but on trusting ones, on people who are open to love and connection and the possibility of good things. The most sophisticated financial predators don't look for victims who are naive. They look for victims who are emotionally available. They are patient. They build genuine warmth before they make a single financial suggestion. By the time the investment conversation starts, the victim is already inside a relationship that feels real, because in many ways, it is real: the time spent, the affection shared, the sense of being known. The red flags are often visible only in retrospect, or to someone on the outside. An investment return that sounds too high, anything consistently above 8 or 9% annually, should prompt serious questions. A fund with no verifiable registration with provincial securities regulators. A business address that turns out to be a mail forwarding service. Urgency around a deadline. Reluctance to allow independent legal or financial review of documents. These are not guarantees of fraud, but they are invitations to slow down and look harder. In Canada, investment funds must be registered with provincial securities regulators. You can verify any fund and any advisor through the Canadian Securities Administrators National Database at securities-administrators.ca. It takes 3 minutes and costs nothing. That 3 minutes could be the most important 3 minutes of your financial life. And this: if someone in your life reaches out to you in whatever way they know how, with whatever signal they have, please listen. Nathan used a hand signal we invented for a 7-year-old's problem. He used it because some part of him knew, before his conscious mind was ready to say it out loud, that he needed someone outside the situation to look at what was happening. That instinct is worth more than any financial document. Protect it in the people you love, and trust it in yourself. We didn't lose $1, but we almost did. And the difference, in the end, was a 31-year-old man sitting at a dinner table and squeezing his father's hand 3 times. If your gut is telling you something, it is not nothing. It never is.